On today's show, we're talking about the Rangers' first Cactus League games, signing Kevin Pillar, what he means to this team, and, unfortunately, the two worst words to hear about a top pitching prospect. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is comment any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Alejandro Rosario probably undergoing Tommy John surgery, the Rangers assigning Kevin Pillar, what he means, can he make this team, and the first 3 games of Cactus League play. Before we get into all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or visit FanDuel.com to start today. Now, unfortunately, on Sunday, we woke up to the worst possible news for any pitching prospect, any pitcher in general, not just a prospect, but Alejandro Rosario felt something in his elbow and is likely going to need Tommy John surgery to reconstruct the UCL. Now, it's not official just yet. He felt something in his elbow pitching a bullpen, and the Rangers are probably sure that he is going to undergo Tommy John surgery and miss the entirety of 2025. Maybe we'll come back at some point in 2026 if everything goes according to schedule. But this is just a huge bummer of news. This happens at least once in every spring training. I knew it was going to happen to somebody. I hoped that it wouldn't happen to anybody, but that just felt folly. In the first couple of weeks of spring training, it feels like every single year there's at least one, you hope only one, pitcher who comes back and starts throwing and things don't end up feeling quite right, and then there's a pop in the elbow, and then boom, done for the year. But for it to happen to Alejandro Rosario is just such a gutting feeling. I mean, very grateful that it wasn't Jacob deGrom or Kumar Rocker or Nathan Eovaldi, but still, it happening to anybody is deeply frustrating, especially a guy coming off of an incredible year last year, an incredible pro debut. Alejandro Rosario broke onto the scene, was one of the biggest stories on the Rangers minor league side, if not for Sebastian Walcott being absolutely sensational and 18 years old and crushing it in full season ball, and Kumar Rocker bursting onto the scene and being absolutely unhittable in the minor leagues, then Rosario was the biggest thing anyone was talking about. He made it all the way up to Double-A, didn't end up pitching because he was dealing with shoulder fatigue, but started the year in Down East, absolutely dominated there, went all the way up to High A Hickory, dominated there. Then at the very end of the season got called up to Frisco, where he didn't end up pitching, but 129 strikeouts in 88 in the third innings with a 2.24 ERA between two levels. That is absolutely fantastic. Not to mention only 1.3 walks per 9. I mean, the guy has incredible stuff and incredible command. I mean, 3+ pitches, very, very good pitches to potentially double plus, and he throws them for strikes. And he knows exactly what he's doing and how to attack hitters, and attacked hitters incredibly well last year. And, I saw a scenario where if everything broke right, he could end up making his major league debut by the end of the season. That's obviously not going to happen now. You hope that everything goes well, but I mean, I've been listening to the audiobook of The Arm by Jeff Passan talking about, what all we do and don't know about arm injuries, and it's just being confronted with the grueling reality of what a 12-month rehab does to a person. I mean, it's routine, but it happens so frequently, but it's still such a frustrating and upsetting thing. A guy who was a top 100 prospect by the big 3 publications that rank top prospects from Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, MLB Pipeline, all of those had him as a top 100 prospect. with Baseball America having him as the number 49 prospect in all of baseball. I mean, that is how good he was. And he won the Rangers Nolan Ryan Minor League Pitcher of the Year award. And this is now the second straight Nolan Ryan Minor League Pitcher of the Year to undergo Tommy John surgery in consecutive seasons. This year, in 2024, the winner of the award was Alejandro Rosario. Here we are. 2023, it was Jose Cordial. He also underwent Tommy John surgery. 2022, it was Cole Reagans, who was traded the next year. Seems to be one of the few people who have escaped the curse. In 2021, the winner was Cole Winn, and then immediately the next year, he forgot how to throw strikes, or when he threw strikes, they were just meatballs right down the middle where he got absolutely crushed. Thankfully, he has worked his way back to making his major league debut, which after an incredible 2021 season, Cole Winn was fantastic. He was so good. Then in 2022 and 2023, he just completely fell off to the point where it looked like his big league career, his pitching career, was going to be done before it even started, at least at the big league level. Then he made his debut and had a really great start, but still nowhere near what the Rangers were expecting from him when they drafted him in the first round, or especially what they were expecting from him in 2021. And you look back at some of the other recipients of this award, maybe there is a curse attached to it. I honestly don't know. It's hard to go between, is there a curse attached to it, or were the Rangers just not very good at pitching development? It's a little bit of both. You look at 2019, the winner, Jason Barr, honestly didn't have that great of a year in 2019. It was just such a barren landscape. He didn't pitch in the minor leagues in 2020 because there was no minor league season. Pitched in AAA in 2021 and 2022, but never ended up making the big leagues. Tyler Phillips was the winner in 2018. He was eventually waived by the Rangers before he made his big league debut back in 2021. Did make his big league debut for the Phillies, had a couple of good starts there, but nothing consistent. And Kyle Cody in 2017, he missed basically all of 2018 and quite a bit of 2019 as well. If my memory is remembering correctly, I know he only made pitched in two outings at the very end of 2018, the year after he won this award. Yohander Mendez won it in 2016. He fell off a cliff. Ariel Gerardo won in 2015. He didn't exactly have the best 2016 and big league career after that. Chichi Gonzalez won it in 2014. In 2015, he was still good, but then after that home run he gave up in the playoffs, he just never really found it again. He's bounced around. He had some big league action after that, but 2013, Luke Jackson won it. He was really good in 2013, was okay in 2014, and then started to derail after that. You look at the last couple of guys before that, Cody Buchel in 2012, Robbie Ross Jr. in 2011, Michael Kirkman in 2010, Martin Perez 2009. I mean, and Perez is pretty much the only one on this list of everyone who's won it. Basically since 1995 was the first awarded winner. That was Jeff Davis back in 1995. And of these guys, the only one to have a long, decently successful career, the longest, most successful career is Martin Perez back in 2009. Other than that, not been a whole lot of success since then, or outside of that. Hopefully there will be more success for Alejandro Rosario. The process has come a long way, but it is a huge blow for the Rangers in 2026, where I thought, if things kept on track, about the median range of outcomes for Rosario is that, he'd spend this year in AA, maybe get called to AAA towards the back end of the season, probably start 2026 in AAA, and then fight for a spot in the rotation out of camp in 2026. Maybe make it all the way up in June or so, maybe the midpoint of 2026. But now that's pushed back to, he's probably not going to make his big league debut until 2027, if that. He still hasn't thrown a single pitch in AA, and he's going to miss all of this year. It is just an incredibly frustrating setback that it's going to happen to somebody, and you hope that it doesn't happen to anybody. You hope it doesn't happen to one of your top pitching prospects, but especially for a guy coming off of such an incredible season, such a great breakthrough story, such a guy, who the Rangers drafted in the 5th round, who a lot of people were scratching their heads of okay, you're drafting this guy with a 6.5 ERA. That's what you're doing? What are you doing? This guy was not good at Miami. What do you think you see? And then immediately, once he makes his pro debut, you see, they saw that. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. This kid is incredibly talented. What an incredible find in the draft. What a huge draft win. What a huge pitching development win. Not a sentence often uttered about Texas Rangers pitching prospects, but Alejandro Rosario was and still is that. I don't want to write this off of, oh, let's write this kid's professional obituary. No, he's just going to miss a year. He'll come back. The Rangers have an exceptional medical team. They will get him back to full health, hopefully. He won't miss the entirety of 2025. Maybe he will start throwing some, rehab appearances. Hopefully he'll be ready for 2026. But a UCL surgery is honestly a rite of passage and a frustrating one at that. It just kind of happens to everybody, almost everybody. I guess everybody outside of Max Scherzer, who hasn't ever had UCL repair surgery, and he's pitched the big leagues for 22 years at this point, 20 years. But still an incredibly frustrating bit of news coming out on Sunday. The Rangers will do everything they can to, make sure that this is exactly the outcome that's going to happen, that he is going to have UCL surgery, whether he's going to have the modified Tommy John that Dr. Keith Meister patented, or just the regular old Tommy John. We don't know. We will figure out all of that soon, and I'd imagine the Rangers will have a decision by the end of this week of if he's going to undergo Tommy John surgery or if he is just going to try and rest and recuperate and see if the UCL repairs on its own. Usually that's not the case, but this is just a huge bummer of a bit of news for the Rangers on Sunday. They did have some good news. An outfielder who might end up helping this team might be the guy who the Rangers need to hit those left-handed pitchers. Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, they got a little bit of changing odds for the AL West. The Astros still the favorites to win the division at plus 180. Rangers alone in second place, though, at plus 190. Mariners down there at plus 200. They've got all kinds of different NBA odds. They've got some games for tonight. Right now, the Brooklyn Nets are -3 favorites over the Washington Wizards. I'm sure that is a game that everyone will be very, very closely tracking. Right now, the MVP favorite in the NBA is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at -500. Nikola Jokic is the second favorite at plus 340, and then Giannis down there at plus 10,000. Quite a big drop off from number 2 to number 3. We've got all kinds of different odds there, so go head to FanDuel.com, and new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Shout out to the Everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We'll be back on tomorrow's show talking about this game against the White Sox. John Gray's first start of spring, how he looks, what everything looks like there. Hopefully, I don't know exactly when Jacob deGrom's first start will be. I'm assuming it will be sometime this week. Hopefully we'll see Kumar Rocker at some point this week. I'm hoping that we get to see those guys in at least a couple of televised games. Rangers had their first televised game, not their broadcast, but the Cubs broadcast on Sunday. So just getting to see some Rangers baseball. That was on MLB TV if you have a subscription to that. But just getting to see some Rangers baseball on my TV screen just does something to you. The first one of the year just does something to your brain saying, okay, all right, winter's over, everything is going to be just fine. Just like it will be for Kevin Pillar, who the Rangers signed to a minor league deal, the longtime outfielder last year, spending time with the, where'd we go? Sorry, I had the wrong Kevin pulled up. I had Kevin Kiermaier, his page pulled up. Last year, spending time between the White Sox and the Angels, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And from my memory last year, I mean, Kevin Pillar, when the Rangers played the White Sox, or the Angels, it was in late May. And at that point in the season, Kevin Kiermaier's numbers were absolutely fantastic. Fantastic, because he has had an incredible month of May. But that kind of buoyed a lot of his numbers last year. I mean, for the season, in the month of May, he played in 19 games, 15 of those were starts, 69 plate appearances, and had 5 home runs and 1147 OPS for the month. He hit over 400 that month, slugged over 700, on base of 435. Also stole 4 bases that month. He was just on fire. But outside of that, Every single other month, he had a 650 or lower OPS, and 650 was the high point. In April, March, in 17 games there, he had an exactly 650 OPS. In June, it was 628. In July, it was sub 600. In August, it was sub 550, and in September and October, 38 plate appearances there, a 336 OPS. So it really fell off quite a bit. And Pilar said last year, hey, this is my last year. I'm going to retire. This is it. I'm done for. Otherwise, I would have looked a little bit more closely into him as a potential free agent for the Rangers to go and get, because he was, back in his heyday, back in 2016, 2015, even a little bit 2017 with Toronto. He was a fantastic defensive center fielder. Never been a big bat first guy. Only had one season where he's had 20 or more home runs. That was back in 2019. Of course, the juiced ball year. A couple other seasons where he had 15 or more home runs back in 2017, 2018. He also did it again in 2021 with the Mets. But last year, only 8 home runs, a 667 OPS on the season between Chicago and LA. And, one thing that he did do well, he's no longer an elite defender. He's not an elite speed guy. Still, sprint speed was in the 78th percentile last year, even as a 35-year-old. He is now 36, but he changed his mind. He said, you know what, that retirement thing, it wasn't all it's cracked up to be for those few months that I was going to do it. He bought a house in Argyle and said, okay, talked with his family, said, hey, we're not going to miss out on too many things of you, continuing to play baseball. We love watching you play baseball. He still had that hunger in him, and he said, okay, well, how about we give it another shot? And the one thing that he did incredibly well last year, the Rangers could use this specific skill set, is he crushed left-handed pitching. I mean, absolutely obliterated left-handed pitching. 125 plate appearances last year against lefties. He hit .310 with an on-base of .352 and slugged .500. That is an .852 OPS. 3 of his 8 home runs came against left-handed pitchers. He also had 5 against righties. He had a .542 OPS against right-handed pitchers last year, but still can crush lefties. And the Rangers could use an outfielder who could crush lefties. It would be nice if an additional outfielder, I should say. It would be nice if that additional outfielder that learned to crush lefties would be Evan Carter, or it would be Leo Taveras. But alas, those guys are not exactly the lefty crushing types. Wyatt Langford does that fairly well. Adolis Garcia has done that well in the past. But just that one extra bat that crushes lefties and can play the outfield, all 3 spots. He played center field mostly last year, played a little bit of right field, played a little bit of left field, and he was, fine defensively. Not elite, but fine. And at age 36, I'd imagine he'll still be fine. He's still, above average speed guy, in the top quarter of baseball last year at 35. That's impressive that he can maintain that foot speed. I don't know if he'll still be in the 78th percentile of sprint speed this year. Probably a little bit down because once you hit your mid 30s, you start to slow down just a little bit. He hasn't slowed down all that much, and he can still absolutely crush lefties. A very, very valuable skill. It's going to be hard for him to crack this roster. I mean, there are not a whole lot of spots position player wise, unless the Rangers want to option one of Zeke Duran or Josh Smith. I think that's really their only option there. I don't think Leody Taveras has any more option years. I don't think you can option him once he, is arbitration eligible, which he is at this point. And I also don't think he just has any more option years left at this point. Maybe Pilar could crack this roster if there is an injury, but I think it's an interesting signing. I think it's a guy who has a valuable skill set, who is one of those old veterans in the room. Now that they ended up losing out on bringing back Travis Jankowski, or I don't know about losing out on, just decided to not bring back Travis Jankowski. He's officially signed a deal with the Chicago Cubs. So long to El Blondie, World Series champion and outfield legend. I mean, incredible 2023 and a incredibly bad 2024. Still a guy beloved in the room, and Pilar brings some of that similar skill set of, bench outfield bat, guy who is beloved in the room, guy who has been around for quite some time, has been a very, very good defender in his day, could maybe help with Wyatt Langford improving his defensive abilities, same with Evan Carter. I don't think he's going to make much of an impact on Adolis Garcia because he's already been a veteran in the big leagues for, 4 seasons now. I think he kind of is exactly what he is, but learning a bit from him in spring training, I think, should be helpful for those youngsters in the outfield in Langford and Carter. Just learning from the guy, having another good clubhouse guy in the room, and if God forbid, if there is some kind of an injury to somebody in the outfield, Pilar would be a great guy to plug in there. I love Dustin Harris. He's having a decent spring, but I think that Pilar, being a right-handed hitter who crushes lefties, I mean, Harris is another left-handed hitter who he's not terrible against lefties, but not particularly adept against them. It's just the one skill set that I thought the Rangers didn't address offensively that maybe should have. That's why I kind of wish they had gone a little bit for Randall Grichuk. But once they got Jock Peterson, I mean, he's just such a big upgrade offensively. Same with Jake Berger is such a big bat offensively that, Berger should crush lefties. Peterson isn't really going to play much against lefties. I think that this is a solid depth signing. We'll see what happens with him. Maybe he does end up not making the team and ends up retiring anyway, but I think this is an interesting guy to take a flyer on. I think it's a guy that's absolutely worthwhile to take a flyer on. I'm glad that it's a minor league deal with a major league spring training invite as opposed to just a straight up major league deal. But still, an interesting signing, and a signing at this point in spring training is rare. And I thought the Rangers team was pretty much finished, but I think Pilar is an interesting addition to add in to this group, and I'm excited to see what he can do this spring with the Rangers. Coming up, we're going to talk about some big league games. Finally, some spring training games. Dive in, deep analysis to every single pitch, or just what actually even mattered from these first spring training games. Talk about all that and more right after this. Now, the Rangers have finally played their first spring training games. They've even had their first televised game on Sunday, not through their own broadcast, but through the Cubs. But what the heck even mattered from these games? What mattered? Well, the good thing from all these games, nobody else, at least that we know at this point, has gotten injured. Everybody else that played in these games, pitchers, all looked healthy. Nathan Eovaldi went for a couple innings in the first game. Dane Dunning also went for a couple innings in that first game. Dunning looked a little bit sharper than Eovaldi, but nonetheless, the velocity was in a good place for Evo. Cody Bradford looked really darn good in his first couple inning outing. We also got to see Tyler Maley's first outing and Jack Leiter's first outing of the spring. Of these games, I think Leiter's outing stands out to me the most. Ended up going 2 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, no runs, 1 strikeout on a vicious slider. I mean, absolutely disgusting slider, and the velocity for Leiter was way up there in that first game. I mean, sitting in the upper 90s. I mean, upper. I mean, averaging a little bit more than 98 miles per hour on that fastball, touching as high as 99.9 miles an hour on the gun in his first spring training game. That is a good sign. The velocity on all of his pitches was up across the board. Loved seeing that. Only went for a couple of innings in that one. Could he maintain averaging 98 miles an hour in a game for 5 innings for 80 to 100 pitches? I don't know. Maybe. But the Rangers changed a little bit of his ramp-up program so that he would be closer to game velocity right around his first spring training game, as opposed to ramping it up a little bit earlier like he did in spring trainings past, which made him, I guess, a little bit more gassed come the end of the season. But he talked about it. He said, hey, I feel like I have a better handle on my mechanics. I feel like I have a better handle on, what makes my mechanics, what makes me most efficient in my pitches. I didn't really need to be ramped up as fast as I was in years past. You don't need to be chucking in the upper 90s, before you're actually pitching in games. It doesn't really do anybody any good. So it's just a better, more well planned out plan of attack from this spring for Jack Leiter. I honestly love seeing that from him. I love seeing him, have that nasty slider. I mean, the fastball velocity. I mean, that's just such a great thing for Jack. I mean, the other properties about his fastball, I mean, it wasn't a slow fastball by any means in last year. I mean, it was averaging 96.4 miles an hour, which in terms of fastball velocity, that's 86th percentile of baseball. I mean, it's not like it's just flat. It's got a lot of those other properties that you love to see in a fastball, the movement, the deception. He relied on it a little bit more than I think he should have last year, which is why you look at the run value on that pitch, even though all the metrics, love the shape of it. But he's throwing it over 51% of the time, and batters kind of knew that it was coming, and he couldn't trust enough of his other stuff to be thrown for strikes, so they just sat on it and absolutely crushed it. But the sliders coming along, the curveball looked, I think, a lot better last year than it had looked in many years past. Coming out of the draft, initially his curveball was better than his slider. Then the thought kind of flip-flopped of, okay, maybe his slider can eventually be better than his curveball. The changeup was a very effective pitch for him last year. Cutter, not so much. He didn't throw it all that much. I mean, he only threw 12 cutters in the big leagues last year, which was around 1% of the pitches that he was throwing. But the slider had great movement profile and all that good stuff. I think he's starting to trust that one a little bit more. I think the curveball he's starting to trust a little bit more. Both of those pitches, if they're good, then that really is so important for Jack. I mean, trusting all of that other stuff. It's the same thing with Rocker. Both of those guys. I mean, you have the one pitch of theirs that's 70 grade, the breaking ball for Rocker and the fastball for Leiter, but it's just trusting that other stuff and making hitters respect the other stuff enough so that you can use that effective great pitch in the right counts, in the right situations, and make hitters not just be able to sit on that one pitch, because unless you're Mariano Rivera with that cutter, no one pitch is going to get big league hitters out, especially if you are a starting pitcher like these two hope to be. Now, the other things that I thought were notable from this spring training, getting to see Malcolm Moore getting his first game action, the Rangers catching prospect, the first round pick out of Stanford last year, a left-handed hitting catcher. His first hit of the spring, left on left, an opposite field single, a well-struck, well-blooped single right over that shortstop's head. Exactly what you love to see from a youngster. Bruce Bochy was raving about his talks with the young catching prospect Malcolm Moore. I'm excited to see what he does this year. I don't know exactly where he'll start. I wouldn't be surprised if he started again in High A. I'm trying to remember if that is the Spartan Burgers or if that will be the Hickory Crawdads. I think it's the Spartan Burgers now. I swear, it'll take me a second because they keep on switching the names and the locations and the leagues of those two affiliates over there in Carolina. But if he did start in Frisco, I don't think he will, but I'm sure we'll see him in Frisco at some point this season. But a guy who was a bat-first catching prospect, watching him behind the plate, the actions look good. The ability to block balls look good. The framing looked fine for the couple of innings that I was able to watch him catch those games. That is exciting to see. And, offensively, not a whole lot going for the Rangers. They are, unfortunately, 0-3 in Cactus League play, which you should read so much into. I think they were, one of the top teams in the Cactus League last year. There's just a lot of very good Cactus League performances. I honestly can't remember because as soon as spring training is done, everything that happened in that spring is pretty much just, put right out of my mind, outside of Wyatt Langford's incredible spring in 2023. And Cole Reagan's looking, or 2024, and Cole Reagan's looking incredible in the spring in 2023. There's not a whole lot else that, sticks around in the brain. But Jack Leiter sitting in those upper 90s, that was an encouraging thing to see. Cody Bradford just looked really darn good in that first outing. A couple of innings, a couple of strikeouts, no walks, just one hit. Adrian Hauser looked, pretty fine. Walter Pennington snapped off a couple of breaking balls that looked really, really good in his one inning of work. The Rangers had a little bit of defensive kerfuffle, one defensive miscue at second base that kind of let an inning spiral out of control. The Rangers got up to a 5-0 start against the Cubs on Sunday, but alas, the Cubs, they're just too good. They're just too good in this very limited spring training venue. They are 4-0. The Rangers are 0-3, coming back from down 5-0 to score 6 unanswered runs. What does that say? It says nothing. It's spring training. There's only so much that you can glean. Seeing Jake Berger getting a hit, Corey Seager getting a hit, Marcus Semien getting a hit at the top of this lineup, getting to see Josh Young work a really, really good plate appearances that ended up in resulting in a walk, fouling off a couple of really tough 2-strike pitches against a very tough reliever, a former Astros reliever in Ryan Presley, seeing Ryan Presley in not an Astros uniform. Made me smile and giggle just a little bit, not as much as it made me smile and giggle more than a little bit seeing Kyle Tucker in a Cubs uniform, not in an Astros uniform. Just remembering that, oh yeah, they did decide to do that on purpose. Good for them. Good for Kyle Tucker getting out of that toxic environment in Houston. But just seeing him as a guy who the Rangers will see maybe a couple of times this year. I think the Rangers play the Cubs for a 3-game series this year. I don't think that it's in Wrigley. It might be. I think it is going to be in Wrigley because last year the Rangers opened the season with the Cubs at home, so the Rangers will go on the road to Wrigley this year. Maybe they'll see a little bit of Kyle Tucker. Maybe they'll see a little bit of Ryan Presley. Maybe not. But just seeing these guys go out there, and Trevor Hauver having himself a pretty good spring. Nobody else has homered for the Rangers yet, but the Rangers outfield / I guess he's just an outfield prospect at this point. The last piece who has not made the big leagues from the Joey Gallo trade, along with Josh Smith and Ezekiel Duran, and of course Glenn Otto. Hauver spent last year in Round Rock. He is a guy who has very good on-base skills, has got some raw pop in there, not a great batting average guy, but the on-base skills have been there. He works a lot of walks, kind of a 3 true outcome guy, except not as many home runs as you would like from a 3 true outcome guy. Last year had a 785 OPS in Round Rock, 104 games, 420 plate appearances, but just 11 home runs, 12 home runs the year before that, 13 the year before. That would just, 17 the year before that, but would just love to see a little bit more home runs from Trevor Hauver, a guy who, works a lot of counts and, has a couple of very long home runs. When he gets a hold of one, he can really, really get a hold of one. But alas, he is the only one who has not made the big leagues from that Joey Gallo trade. I don't know if he will with the Rangers. It would take a couple of injuries in the outfield, which you never, ever are rooting for or wanting to see. But good for him, making an impact this spring training. Good for former Rangers Sam Huff getting a big, loud home run against his former team with the Giants on Saturday's game. But not a whole lot to glean too much at this point from the spring. I can't wait to figure out when the heck we are going to finally see Jacob deGrom in some spring training action. We were going to see Kumar Rocker in some spring training action, because that is the stuff I'm going to be keeping a very, very close eye out on this week. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.